This is the first in a series of lectures on how to write the argument essay for AP English Language and Composition. Okay, here we go. Let's get started. Now, as a general introduction to this specific essay, I want to consider four things. One, the argument essay has to be written like the rhetorical analysis text was written, meaning, those techniques and strategies and devices and appeals and things that you noticed that the rhetorical writer did, those things that you wrote about in your rhetorical essay. Well, essentially, you have to become the rhetorical writer for your argumentative essay, meaning you have to compose an essay that approximates the same techniques and the same strategies that the writer of that passage made. Just to give you an idea, a way to think of it. When you think about the argumentative essay, you really should be thinking about a persuasive essay. You should be thinking of how do I craft an argument that is uh, um, aware aware of the techniques that are persuasive, that can work on a reader. Something else to think about is that good arguments are not simple. What I mean by that is that yeah, they are clear and they are to the point and they're easy to understand, but that's because they come from sophisticated thinking. So argumentative essays are not necessarily simplistic, though they should be clear and they should be easily uh, easily communicated to your reader. I want you to think of it that way. Also, in order to compose an argumentative essay that is attractive to the reader, there should be a lot of thinking before the writing is done. You have 40 minutes to write this essay, and the text that you're provided, you can probably read within a minute or two, maybe. So really, you have a good amount of time to write this essay. But you shouldn't use all of it for the writing. You should use at least 10 minutes to just sit on the idea, to craft the argument. Um, Arguments are always best at the end. Therefore, you should get to the end of the idea before you even begin the writing. Also, I want you to consider something that I think is probably the most important thing when talking about argumentative essays. You're not arguing facts or truth. You're arguing that you have an opinion and this opinion makes sense. I don't want you to think of it. I think one of the mistakes that writers make when writing the argumentative essays is that they go too wide and too deep. They're trying to argue something very large for everyone in the world. I think it should be more specific. I think it should be more clear about what you're trying to argue, and argue something very simplistic, which is, I have an opinion about the issue at hand, and it makes sense. Let me prove it to you. Think of it that way. Now, to understand this essay, we've talked about how this essay should really be called a persuasive essay because argument sounds very incendiary, very, well, argumentative. But what really you should be thinking about is you should have reasonable claims. You should have small concessions, right? You should try to convince, not alienate your reader. When you're thinking about this type of prompt that you receive, I want you to consider that you may receive any of the following three: so short statements, an excerpt from a text, or a situation. Essentially, what could happen is they may give you an idea to write about, and then you have to establish your own position. They may give you an excerpt from a text and or a quote. A quotation is probably the most likely of the options because that's the one that happens a lot over the years. Or a situation like it was last year, for instance. Uh, they give you an idea, overrated, and I'll talk about something that's overrated and why. So they may give you any of these three. And essentially, your job is to agree, disagree, or qualify the claim. We'll talk about what these mean as we continue with these series of lectures. Now, next time we'll talk about reading the prompt, and that's on the next video. That's it.